Hello, I'm Jester Borris with I Want to Be a GM, and welcome to D&D Through the Ages Part 2, The Cleric. Be sure to like this video. To ensure that you don't miss any of our future videos, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications by clicking the bell icon. In the comments section, let us know some of your favorite times playing a cleric, or some of the times that a cleric in your party got himself in over his head. If you'd like to find the places where we hang out, be sure to check the social links in the video description. In particular, we've got a fairly active Discord, and so if you'd like to join the growing community of game masters over there, you can hop onto Discord and share your best tips, tricks, and stories. We'd love to have you. So join myself, Roy the Planescape Guy, Gwydion the Long-Winded, as we go through the ages with the Cleric in D&D. Hey guys, Jester Borris here with I Want to Be a GM as we continue Through the Ages Part 2, The Cleric. With me today on my left,
Gwydion, the long-winded.
and to my right.
Troy, Planescape Guy.
And we again are covering the Cleric. We're making it into 2nd edition AD&D.
Where the clerics are now called priests.
One of the major
I didn't want to
changes.
forget.
Yes, well, which is interesting because a lot of it does call it priest, but the book will still
Refer to it as cleric.
but it does so in parentheses, which
Yes.
is a little odd. However, we've got a lot of the core from AD&D First Edition brought forward. So let's start where we did last time with hit dice, Troy.
Our hit dice. Well, everybody knows by now, hopefully you paid a little bit of attention. The Cleric is a pretty decent fighter.
Right.
So we'll talk about their spells here in a minute, but the Cleric still has a die 8 for their own hit points.
Okay.
Die 8 plus Constitution, and there you go.
Same as the previous edition.
Same
but
as the previous edition.
up from earlier editions, D6 to D8.
Yep.
And then Gwydion, in terms of spells, did we see any major spells changes?
There's additions. There's quite a few additions to the spells, but there's not a lot of change in there because we still see one spell at first level, yay, and then two, and then 2 and 1, and so on like that.
Right.
So the advancement is pretty much the same. Now, one of the big changes in the old to, say, 5e that I want to mention is when you increased the level, you added your Constitution bonus each level. You didn't just do it once,
Nope.
like in 5e.
Right.
You do it each level. So that's what really helped your character survive, is if you, and everybody was like, I don't care what it is, I need a high Constitution
Yeah.
to add those pips.
Unless you had a 6 with a -2, and then you're like,
Don't go there.
dire rats. So some of the expansion we see, though, for 2nd edition is we go from a experience table of 11 to a now formalized table of 20. So we saw that, starting in 2nd edition, carried now all the way through 5th. 20 level is sort of your peak in terms of the way the game is set up.
But they keep it open for higher levels if you want. And
Oh, yeah, and
in 2nd edition, they came out with, what was that, the Immortals? Or was
That was
3?
part of the box set. So
Yeah, that was
gold
part of the
box
box
set,
set.
5 Immortals.
Right here.
Yep. It does not come with its own Queen soundtrack, but you can borrow one. And so we definitely get the expansion, but there wasn't a lot of core that was modified for the Cleric between AD&D 1 and AD&D 2, with the exception of maybe the expansion of the spells list. And,
Non-weapon proficiencies,
Right.
which affected clerics.
but
as
that
well.
was what
That
Troy
was
wanted to talk
some
about.
old
So
stuff
Unearthed
in addition.
Arcana, 1st edition, introduced the proficiency system, but in
Yeah.
2nd edition, we see it formalized.
Yeah, everybody got all kinds of really cool skills. Some were specific to your class and race, but I was a little more excited about turning undead.
Oh, well, you found the page.
I find the page because I marked it earlier.
Well, we'll talk about their skills in a second. One of their abilities, of course, then turning undead. And this is,
Turning undead.
but this is one of the first times we see a major change to turning undead.
This is a pretty good change
Yes.
because 1st edition, up to 1st edition, to turn a skeleton, even in the white box set with 2 dice,
2d6.
you needed to roll a 7 or better. Now in 2nd edition, you need to roll a 10 or better. And they also make the distinction: a skeleton or a 1-hit die monster. So, taking into account that there are other monsters now by this time,
Right, they classify as undead.
Undead,
One hit die.
a 1-hit
Yeah.
die
Or
undead
lower.
monster, right?
If anybody is not familiar with hit die was how they used to classify monster strength, and now we've got the challenge rating system. We've got some qualms with, but the same idea was it was meant to show you just how strong is this monster.
No. Yes.
Yes. So, but yeah, so a 1-hit die, it's an undead badger. There you go. Unless it's a honey badger. But what do we got there? Are we doing a 20 yet? Yeah, it is a 20 in this one.
It is a 20 hit, it's a 20 side dice on the second edition, turning undead. So you have a 50-50 chance of turning an undead skeleton at that level.
Yeah.
Yep. So some of the things, is vampire on that chart over there? Because we talked a little bit about vampire in the original. So is vampire still a possibility, or is that just right out?
So a vampire or a 9 hit die. You need a 20 at level 6.
So unless you max the roll. Now, the other thing to mention here, there's no modifier to this roll.
Typically, no.
Yeah. So straight dice, liver die. Here's a vampire. Good luck.
Oh, yeah. First and second edition. Oh, yeah. We kill people left and right. Oh, yeah.
Now, we talked a little bit earlier, Gwydion, about the number of character sheets. How many character sheets would I prepare?
Now you were using sheets of paper and
we got away from the cards.
We got away from the cards and started using sheets of paper.
Quite a bit more survivable.
Yeah, if you use the cards, it was always a 3x7 and always the Rolodeck or the big roller that you did. And we started going to paper. Of course, in the 80s, you started having computers out there, and Macs were really good, and you had the dot matrix and
Commodore 64.
That's right. And so we could print out our stuff, and there was actually stuff coming out. TSR came out with a disc. I actually have an original character generator disc.
Is that the 5 1/4?
No. This was actually a CD that came in the book.
Oh, okay.
And I'll have to bring that out next time. But it was a character generator. So but no, we are now using sheets of paper and notebooks and stuff like that. And we didn't know what a page protector was, so we'd use those little cloth things that covered the holes to where we could rip them. You remember those. So no, you don't remember those. So it's just us old folks.
Yeah. So when it comes to Cleric, we still had some of the restrictions that we saw in the first edition.
Yes.
So some of the races that could be a cleric were still dwarves, elves, half elves, but you don't see, or where I get it, gnome is on there, but half orcs,
half elves,
but half orcs weren't allowed.
No.
But most everybody else.
Typically, you didn't play half orcs.
Yeah.
In first or second edition.
No, I remember them being available somewhere. Might have been one of the expansions. There was so much expansion that we'll get into that.
Yeah, there's tons and tons of expansion.
Yeah, half orcs were pretty much removed from the second edition. Half orcs, assassins. There was a little controversy. Some other things were removed in the second edition to make it a little friendlier play for the people that didn't understand the game, and that was reflected in the rules as well as the classes and so on like that.
Because again, we've got priests instead of clerics.
Instead of clerics, and went from there. So we like the changes. We like the addition to the rules. We like the additional spells, and this was so much neater. It was placed together in such a way as we could flip to a page, find it, or just copy the page and put it in with our character, which usually we did. Yeah. You'd go to your local Kinko's or use the school library printer and print stuff off.
I still do.
Yeah.
So here we make another reference to a knightly order. The cleric class is similar to certain religious orders of knighthood in the Middle Ages. Here, the Teutonic Knights, the Knights Templars, and the Hospitallers. Yeah. These orders combine military and religious training with a code of protection and service. So, thematically, as we break this out from Paladin, Paladin is more knights in shining armor, Arthurian legend knights.
Full-on holy fighter.
Right, and then these guys were more your Templar and that sort of combatant.
A knight typically is there at the behest of the king.
Right.
He's doing the king's business, whereas a cleric is there at God's
Yeah, they were called by their
Yeah.
deity. So
Yeah.
Right.
a little bit of thematic difference, which is why you see they have different focuses. But their faith was still a big component to the paladin. It's definitely central to the theme of the priest in second
absolutely,
edition.
Yeah.
absolutely.
There was
One of the things I didn't mention in first edition, the cleric has said that at the DM's option, the material components for any of the cleric spells, even the druid spells, could be replaced by use of a holy symbol at the DM's discretion. Because some spells would have a material component of such whatever for doing the cleric doing a spell, but at DM's option they said you can just use your holy symbol that we know you're going to have with you all the time.
like they do now. There's verbal, material, and semantic, or a combination thereof, and some of that started rearing its ugly head in some of these, and it actually made for some great adventures and side quests. Was to go after materials, or to get enough money to be able to buy the materials that you needed for your spells, because we made our characters have the stuff on them to do it. And when they picked a deity, they had to have the things on them to sacrifice in propitiation to gain their spells or gain favor. So if it was pretty feathers or something, they had to be gathering those. And
one that would come up is the diamond of a certain GP value to resurrect your buddy that failed his saving throw against the poison trap.
Yeah.
Like, oh man.
And then they owe you.
Yeah,
Look, dude, I used the diamond on you, so I'm gonna need 2, one to replace yours and one for whoever else does it.
Yeah, for the next guy. One of the things that was interesting, I was trying to remember where I'd seen it. Here it is: weapons allowed. A war DT might allow his priest to fight with spears or swords. So a little bit of break in second edition from what we had seen in the restrictions on the class from the earlier editions.
Yeah, so
but it is deity specific.
Yes.
Yeah. So they expanded the deities that could be served. And again, you had to pay attention to what their goal was for your cleric's life, and they allowed certain aspects.
So if I wanted to have a cleric to Ares, the god of war, hell yeah, I'm going to have a spear. Hell yeah, I'm going to have a sword.
Yeah, a little bit different than the priest of the dead, who makes sure that he's basically your undertaker priest.
Just a little more mel. How about Ilona, mistress of the hunt? We might have a bow. But we're not going to, so they're making it more specific to whoever your deity is.
This fit well with the world settings that we had introduced in first edition.
Oh yeah.
So Greyhawk and Forgotten Realms in particular had their own specific world setting deities, and the ones that I've mentioned come right out of Forgotten Realms, and then the ones that we've seen because Forgotten Realms is the standard for 5th edition now. So you'll see a lot of that. Your deity's favorite weapon is sort of your favorite weapon. So if you're a dwarf cleric, you get to use big hammers, and that's awesome.
And also beautifully individualized characters, so you could have more than one cleric, and if you served different deities, it was a completely different play style.
Right.
So it was 2 completely different characters in the party, and which just expanded the role play even further and made it a lot more enjoyable. The spiritual weapon was also classified by the deity's favorite weapon. So when you call forth a spiritual weapon, then if their favorite weapon was a hammer, it's not going to be a battle axe. It's going to be a hammer floating around whacking on people. So that made a difference as well. And if you utilized your deity's weapon, you got bonuses. That started up here, and that's what was important in here, was getting those bonuses. Yeah,
skills was one of those that I mentioned a little bit. We'll dive into where you could start to get both combat and non-combat related skills that would give you the bonuses. And I don't remember if I want to say they had restricted armor.
Well, again, the armor was same as the weapon. So if you worship Ares, god of war, you could wear full plate mail and swing a sword.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you worshipped Ilona, mistress of the hunt, perhaps leather armor is about as far as you're going to go.
Yeah. Right.
So it was depending on who your deity was.
Right. And
for druids.
Now I want to mention this as a spoiler for wizards or magic users.
Yes.
Probably the very first homebrew change that we made in our campaign was we allowed wizards to wear leather armor.
You got tired of using your one spell slot per day.
Yeah, that or just having a robe. It's like, look, there's no metal in this. It's just leather armor. We just skinned a cow, and we put a poncho on. Can we at least have +1 for leather armor?
Gandalf didn't need leather armor.
And
That
he
old man had a staff.
and a bastard sword.
Yeah, but he was level 2.
Level 20, maybe.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
It's,
Yeah.
I mean,
That was after he died and got resurrected.
That's
He goes,
right,
I'm
that's
level 3, baby.
Level 3. Bring it on.
well, let's get back to the point of this craziness. Cure Light Wounds. Cure Light Wounds, the main spell we're looking at for the cleric through the ages here. And still, it's that 1d8 of healing. 1d8 of healing.
Did they remove the +1?
There is no +1.
Is it per level?
I think that was cure wounds, not cure light. Now, this was something I forgot about this, and this is where we started to see reversible spells.
Yes.
So,
Yes, Cure Light Wounds is reversible for 1d8 of damage, but there are some restrictions. You can't do it to undead. They must have a real body. They can't be a spirit or ghost.
But it was one of those. It was interesting to start to see that. You're like, well, because the questions always come up. It's like, well, if I can heal this guy, can I just grab him and knock him out?
Oh, yeah.
So we've already done that.
We
That's
already
turned
did
out
that.
All right.
We already
Yeah,
did that. Where were you?
Yeah, we were talking about
page?
vampires. Yeah, it's all good.
I've never made it without
Would
biting.
you give Grandpa his pill?
It's a suppository. So,
I'm out.
So we've talked about turn undead. We talked about gods and spells, weapons, armor, combat, their hit dice, their alignment, and cure light wounds.
yeah. Now,
And-
what we got here?
Was that
So
one?
the initiative was a thing we covered, and some of the other stuff. But we've got some of the expansion books. This was one of the things that was really cool that came along with second edition, and Troy had mentioned this just before the break. So the complete priest's handbook, the complete druid's handbook, just the book covers expanded options for priest, expanded options for druid. There's
Alchemist,
Fighter,
thieves,
oh.
and on and
So
on.
this is a 128-page book dedicated to your priest. What kind of clothing, what type of weapon, what type of armor. There's additional spells, weapon and non-weapon proficiencies specific to the cleric and the different things that they would do.
toolkits,
Toolkits,
so, like
holy items,
yeah.
Incense, candles. This goes on and on and on and on. 128 pages for your cleric, 120-some pages for a druid. Second edition came out with these handbooks for the different classes. We'll show off some more of these in some of the different ones. But it just really, really expanded on your clerics and druids' abilities. The non-weapon proficiencies, I can't go on enough about them. I thought they were just freaking outstanding, because you could get proficiencies in fire building, in armor making, in sewing, navigation by the stars. There's just pages of them, and everybody could get them. So if you had a cleric to let's say alone and mistress of the hunt, and you need to know what time of year it was, so you know what animal was best to hunt, then you would need to know things like that. So there's
Tracking was formalized as a skill.
Tracking is formalized as a skill. Yeah.
With the cleric having to build a stronghold, and people starting to gain a lot of money and wondering what are we going to do with
Yeah,
this?
now that we can go to level 20.
Yeah, we got a lot of money. What are we going to do with this? Where we hold it? They came out with how to build a castle. There was castle supplements. There was catacombs
One right there.
supplements. Yeah, and all these other supplements that came out that said, "Hey, let's show you how to mine."
Yes.
Which was great. Let's see if there's an actual mineral or gemstone or something on this property. And you would actually go around until you rolled something that was in an area, and it had to match the area that it could be in. And then you would look at, okay, now we got to set up a mine. we got to set up some sort of a basic fort or keep to hold things back. Now we got to start building. And they've got all the labor. They've got everything that it takes, everything that it costs, the people that you had to hire. Well, this also brought in royalty. Now you had taxes you had to pay.
Yeah.
And, where knights got to be a landed knight and barony, clerics were also granted land. And sometimes they didn't have to pay for it because they just usurped it from the royal.
Right.
It's like, we need this right over here. But you still had to pay for everything that was built on it because the church wasn't going to do that. Well, there were times that you can actually ask your deity for help, and it would make money go further. Things would go faster. There was all sorts of rules that really expanded play for the priests when they got to a certain level, and there was more stuff we could do with our money.
Yeah, that's one of the things that was, I think, one of the strong points of the earlier editions. They had a lot of tables and things that game masters could use. We've already got enough on our plate trying to write the story. So to be able to generate, a couple things with a few dice rolls, fill in some of the important details, and allow a player then to run with that to not only enhance your campaign, but the player's experience and developing a PC and things. Those were cool tools to have, and definitely some of the things that we still use or reference back second edition when we're putting. I even use them in my sci-fi games. Borrowed content. Okay, maybe it's not a castle, now it's Darth Vader's keep, or whatever it's got to be. But to be able to have that structure within a codified rule set to borrow from is always really handy.
To me, second edition gave us the first opportunity for downtime play.
Oh, right.
Oh, yeah.
We had all these rules, we had all these books, we had all these supplements and stuff. Now we could put things together, we could phone each other, and on the downtime, we could say, listen, before you leave, I need 100 die 4 rolls, 100 die 6, die 8, die 10, die 20, and percentile dice, and I'll just work from that, and we're going to do this, and I'll tell you what the results are when we finally get back together after the month, or after summer, or after camp, or whatever. So downtime, in my opinion, began in second edition.
Right, and just to clarify, he means between game sessions.
Yeah.
So you go home today, then you have something that your characters are doing or their players are working on between game sessions.
Remember how we talked about how long it took to build or craft an item?
Yeah.
There was a lot of times that was the first downtime use, but it wasn't really an expanse for anything except magic items, or maybe armor and armor.
You're just kind of watching the
It was
clock.
a magic item, yeah. So when this came about and all these other supplements, now we had a reason for downtime rules and things that we could do and change our characters or their surroundings. Or, okay, when we come back, this much time has passed, your character is older.
Yes, that actually can happen too.
That's the other thing, was age. So that was a segue. Go ahead.
No, totally fine. The age rules are not something that's been a present, at least since AD&D 1.
Yeah.
I didn't see them really mentioned in the other stuff, but it could come up. Trying to think I had a thought and I lost it. It's like a kobold in a dungeon.
It just ran across the floor over there.
All right.
Yeah, with the age, there were certain things that happened to your attributes as you age. Some things went up, and there were things that actually started going down, especially for a human. On elves, they were fairly immortal.
Well,
it didn't really
You
matter.
have like 1,100 years and older.
Yeah.
It broken into age categories. So if you were young or a young adult, elderly, when you get to another category, strength would go up, intelligence go down, number of things. It was dependent on your race, but I remember that in the back of the DMG. There's a table for that.
Yeah.
First edition DMG.
Yeah.
I remember what I was going to say. Some of those rules were nice because it could let you change the focus of your game. So as you start, particularly with a cleric, perhaps you're out at the front lines, you're healing soldiers in the battle, or you're delving the dungeons to protect the local interests. But as you gain power, prowess, and those sorts of things, your characters, your story, you shift into problems that affect the land and not just the town. And so to be able to have the resources available to not only build your character's power, but to shift your story to those larger problems, that can always be handy too. So don't forget to do that if you guys are out there. A level 15 wizard's probably not delving a dungeon anymore.
Okay.
So not unless it's like a very specific dungeon for a very specific reason.
Yeah.
But
So with these supplement books that came out, one of the interesting ones that they came out with was one called Monster Mythology. And Monster Mythology, the name is a little misleading.
Yeah.
That's the word. Thank you, Mr. Producer. So it's misleading because what is the godlike that beholders worship? The monster or beholder. They are intelligent enough to have a society and they worship a god. He's in here.
yeah,
I don't want to walk into that church on Sunday.
you better roll a really good stealth check. That's, I mean,
So
like, no,
this
no,
this
it's
one
totally-
has
It's Wednesday mornings, I think.
it talks a little bit about the clerics of the different races, what's typically considered a monster race, their deities and how they worship and what they worship, and a number of things about them.
One of the things I found actually really interesting was the god that kobolds worship. His clerics. They can do cure light wounds and stuff, but they actually divine for mineral veins,
Mhm.
and that's part of their cleric duties is to go find out where the minerals are, so the kobolds can go mine it. But it's
Yeah.
interesting because it gets into the way that they're structured, their society is structured,
Yep.
and things like that, resources like that, can help you as a
Yeah.
game master put together a more believable world setting. You know, don't make your monsters just by rote stuff to fight and
Yeah.
kill and collect the gold.
They have a society. They've
Yeah.
got
Yeah.
kids. They've got things they want to protect.
They're there for a
have
reason.
goals, Yeah.
They exist in the world, and,
Yeah.
then so stuff like that's really interesting, particularly when you're looking at, you know, the role that priests, faith, and religion fills in our societies.
Mhm.
It feels similar or the same roles in other intelligent creature societies as you delve into lore, build world settings, or even use that context to understand some of the other world settings like Greyhawk or Faerun.
Yeah.
Now, for those that are listening and they're hearing all this talk about clerics and priests and deities and so on like that, this is a game. These are the game mechanics that we're talking about. We're not talking about stuff that's done in the real world. The players are
yeah.
the good guys, and they're fighting the evils, or at least trying to figure out the puzzles, because a lot of times it's some royal somebody that's trying to usurp a throne, and it's an entire it's an entire puzzle. It's a mystery.
The intricate web.
It is.
Yeah.
It used to be just simple dungeon delves and hack and slash, but it expanded to where it's now storytelling. It's now role playing.
Right.
If you're actually worried about you, friends, family, children playing Dungeons and Dragons itself, if you have an issue with that, there is Holy Lands RPG that is currently out there, and it is faith-based. It's a Christian RPG, Dungeons and Dragons style. It's getting wild acclaims in the Christian faith. So if that's something that you're going towards, a lot of the same mechanics are going to be in this, but it is actually Christian based.
It's got a focus in the.
It does,
Yeah.
and there's a lot to it. It's out there. It's just 2 books, and they can play that, and they're actually going to be doing the same as the others as far as building up characters, this, that, and the other. But it doesn't have the, if you call it controversy as these do. Again, these are game mechanics, magic, deities, spells, fighting. It's all mechanics, and there's also online a Christian defense of Dungeons and Dragons. I encourage you to look that up and read it. It's by a gentleman that is actually a pastor who plays.
Yeah.
And so it comes from him. So anyway, just to
Well,
pass that along.
To your point, as we continue to talk about clerics and faith, we mentioned it earlier. As the game master, ensure that your game is comfortable for your players,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
either highlight or downplay the aspects as necessary. I wouldn't necessarily think that you would need to restrict a class, but if it's going to cause some problems, you might consider it.
Mhm.
So just play the game, and we're here just to explore this particular class as a core class from the white box all the way through 5th edition. So again, if you have any questions or comments, just
give
let
it
us
to
know
us.
about it. So
I want to be a GM on our Facebook, Twitch, Discord, and YouTube channels. You can leave your comments anywhere across the board there. So stay tuned because 3rd edition's coming up.
Yeah, 3rd edition really got a lot of some of the changes that we were talking about here. Mechanically different. Feats, talents, the way you build your character, a lot of cool stuff. So
big change across the board. 3rd edition it became Wizards of the Coast.
Yep.
So when they bought it, they changed a lot of the mechanics of the game to make it theirs.
But you'll be glad to know that the core of the game, the spirit of the game, is still there.
And
you're going to see that when we come on the other side with this.
I'm loving 2nd edition because that's when all the cool box sets came out, like
yeah.
the World of Greyhawk, and
Planescape!
Planescape came out. All those beautiful maps, the almost cloth-like Greyhawk maps.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
They came out before they did the paper ones. And I still use and highly recommend the Forgotten Realms City System box set because there's several maps in there that maps out a city, and there's a book that gives the entire world. It gives businesses, it gives places, it gives names. There's street names on these things. There's the wealthy class all the way down to the slums and so on. I use this in games yet today. I use the Greyhawk maps as the Outer World maps just because they're gorgeous. And there's so many open areas that aren't used, and even the unknown lands. You can place your own world in there if you do your own home brew, and so on. So that's my love of 2nd edition is all the stuff that came out.
Well, I played a lot of 3rd, so I'm excited for showing you guys 3rd edition.
Yep.
As we come back with D&D Through the Ages Part 2, the Cleric. And if you want to continue to hang out with us, you can find the other places we hang out at. Dad, tell them where we are.
We're on Facebook, and it's all I Want to Be a GM. Facebook, Twitch, Discord, and YouTube. I've said it so many times I can't say it anymore.
Yeah, so again, I Want to Be a GM on Discord, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook.
You did it too.
I'm Gwydion the Long-Winded, and I miss you already.
See you on the other side of the break.
Troy, out.